It's my pleasure to welcome Al Stowe to 90 Over 90. Al was born July 14th, 1921 in the northern part of Gaston County, North Carolina, which I believe, Al, makes you 98 years old. Is that right?
That's right.
He was married to the late Beatrice Stewart Stowe in 1948, and together they had one child, Michael. He's the proud grandfather of one and great-grandfather of two. Al is a veteran. He served in the Pacific Theater and is a retired photographer, a professional photographer. Al is also a musician, and hopefully he'll share some of that with us a little later on. He plays the fiddle, and it's a great pleasure to be here this morning, Al, and thank you for being a part of our program, and welcome to 90 Over 90. Thanks for being here.
I appreciate you coming. Thanks ever so much.
Well, thank you. I mentioned in the introduction that you grew up you were born in 1921, which and that you were born in rural part of Gaston County, North Carolina. Tell me a little bit about where you grew up and the house you grew up in and your family.
Well, I was lucky enough to have wonderful parents, and we just lived a quiet life. And at that time, we didn't have any electricity. Indoor plumbing was no. So we just lived a real simple life, and got along real well.
Now, you had 4 siblings. You were the middle child. Is that correct?
Right.
Did when you say you lived a simple life, do you look back on those years as being enjoyable and fondly?
Oh, very enjoyable. Sure thing. Yeah. Close-knit family.
What did your dad do?
My daddy was a painter and a paper hanger.
All right.
And he always had a real big vegetable garden.
How about your mom?
And my mom was a homemaker, and she did all the canning, so we had plenty of food, no problem.
Did you have neighbors, or did you just kind of play with entertain yourself with your brothers and sisters?
Well, most of the time we just entertained among ourselves. My mother always played a piano, and we would sing around the piano. So that was our biggest entertainment.
So you had music in the house?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yes.
Do you think that may have impacted your desire to play music?
Oh, I feel sure it did. Yeah.
Now, you attended, I guess, the local public schools.
Yes, I sure did. There in Dallas.
Primary schools?
Yes, So.
And where did you go to high school?
It was still in Dallas.
What were your interests as a young man growing up in Dallas, and what your memories of what the town of Dallas was like?
Well, my dad always told me about what they did during the election. At that time, Dallas was the county seat, and what a crowd they had, He always enjoyed the election days.
Did he take you with him?
Oh, yeah, I was there, yes,
What was that like?
Well, I was real young, so it's hard to remember exactly.
Did you attend church in Dallas?
Yes, we went to the Holy Communion Lutheran Church in Dallas, sure did.
And I guess Sunday was a big day. Everybody dressed up and went into church.
Everybody had a white shirt and a tie on. Not like they do today.
So you had to dress up to go to church.
Oh, you bet, yeah.
How long did church last? Was it still just an hour?
It's an hour for Sunday school and about an hour for service.
Okay.
Yeah. And we'd always come home. We always had chicken for Sunday dinner. That was a must.
I assume prepared by your mom.
Oh, yes. Wonderful cook.
Yeah. What kind of student were you, Al?
Well, I wasn't that great, but The only thing that I like math real good, and it came easy, but English was probably my hardest, and I thought if I could goof off it, I would have accomplished something, from a teacher.
So
but I was doing harm to myself, but didn't realize it.
were you a little bit of a class clown, or what do you mean by that?
No, now I wasn't too forward. No, I generally took a back seat.
Oh, you did.
Yeah.
When you got into high school? What were your interests? Were you interested in music? What did you do?
Oh, I was very interested in music. That's when I picked up the fiddle and started playing it.
What other instruments, if any, did you play?
Well, I played the mandolin and also the guitar.
All right. So you like the stringed instruments?
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
Now, did that help you with the ladies in any way?
Oh yeah, some of them had guitars, and they'd come over and we'd sing and play together. Sure, yeah.
At the house?
Oh yeah, yeah.
That sounds like that was a major form of entertainment for you and your family.
It was, sure was.
Now, you graduated from high school in the late 30s?
Late 30s,
And
right.
what did you do at that point?
At that time, I took a job at Bonnet for a while.
Bonnet was a local textile firm.
That's right. It manufactured lingerie and dyed lingerie material. And
What was that job like?
Well, I didn't particularly like it. I knew that wasn't going to be my profession, but at the same time, I was carrying papers. I had a observer route in the mornings. Afternoons, I had a Charlotte News route, which most people don't realize that Charlotte had a Charlotte newspaper.
An afternoon paper.
Yes, along with the Gazette, which was an afternoon newspaper. But 20 years later, the Observer, the News was no longer around, and then Gazette moved to the morning.
Right. So you were, I guess, staying pretty busy. Do you remember when that would have been a couple of years? I guess you worked there before the World War II broke out. Do you remember that event in your life?
Yes, one Sunday, a friend of mine, we were out riding around, joyriding, and came on the radio that we had just been attacked by the Japanese at Pearl Harbor. And I said, what is Pearl Harbor? And we pulled into a service station and to buy gas, and the guy happened to be an ex-Marine that retired, and he said, you guys are going to be going. I said, no way. Well, he was right. We did have to go.
He knew a little more about that than you did, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess you were still, you were out of high school, but had just started working.
Yeah.
Now, you joined the Air Force. What prompted you to do that?
Well, I knew I was going to have to go, and I talked it over with my dad, and my dad, he wasn't too complimentary about airplanes. He says, I don't particularly like them airplanes. And he said, you better stay on the ground, son. I said, well, if I'm gonna get shot at, I believe I won't be in the air.
All right.
And so he said, okay, if it's the Air Force you want, well, that's good. Good luck.
So you I guess you left with his blessings. How did your mom feel about you joining the Air Force?
Well, I left her on the front porch crying.
You did?
Yeah.
Did you cry?
Yeah. Yeah, sure did.
Oh, well, I guess that
Yeah.
was, if you're ever going to cry, that would have been a good time to do that.
Yeah, I know.
I think that probably happened a lot on front porches across America at that time.
Oh, yeah.
So you went off, and I think you trained at Craig Field in Alabama.
That was my first stop, Craig Field, yeah.
And then they moved you to Seymour Johnson.
Yeah, well, when I was at Craig Field, that's when the thing happened about the airplane conking out. You know?
Yes, you mentioned. Tell me that story because it may be of interest. That you were training down there, and you tell a little bit about what happened and what you recall.
Well, I was crew chief on I think number 40, and the word came in that the plane was down, and so they told us to go by the supply and pick up a couple 45s. We did. We hooked them on our waist and walking along like cowboys, you know. We got in a squad car, and it's 50 miles away, and we got down there, and we saw the pilot and co-pilot sitting on the wing, which was okay. We were glad they didn't get hurt. But man, that cornfield that they landed in, they really tore a lot of corn stalks down coming in. So anyway, they got on they got in the squad car, and my buddy and I, we stayed there and guarded the plane.
You mean the pilots did?
The pilot and co-pilot got in the squad car and left, and went back to the base. And my buddy and I, we stayed there and guarded the plane. And so, it's a couple hours later, just getting a little bit dark, you know. And I pulled my pistol out one time and took a few steps toward the trees. There's a squirrel up there, you know, and I said, I have a notion to get that squirrel. And the guy said, don't do that. Said, you'll have to account for that bullet you use. I said, oh yeah, that's right. So I put my pistol back, and then I went over a little bit further in the woods, and I saw a light flickering. And I kept looking a little bit closer, and I looked there, and the shades was up, the windows was open, and I saw an old black man in there. He was walking back and forth. He said, Lord, said, I knows you must have needed him more than I do. Said, but and I noticed that there was a little casket over there. And so I looked over and a little bit closer, and several women had those fans, fans just a blowing, you know, white fan, like, you know.
Funeral fans?
Funeral fans, yeah. And so anyway, I came back and told my buddy what I saw, and we sat down on the wing, and I said, about 10 minutes later, we didn't say a word, you know. So that's about it.
Well, must have been a solemn moment for you, Al.
Yeah.
I know it's something you probably remembered for a long time. Is that right?
Oh yeah, I did. Yeah.
Well, you left Craig and went to Seymour Johnson.
Seymour Johnson there.
And did some more training there.
Yeah, I was in 9 months. We worked on electrical and hydraulics and cables. Those are the three big things, and we didn't get any prop training, nothing about the propeller.
And then you moved, I think, up to George Field in Illinois. Is that?
Well, yeah, we came back to Craig. They always put me on detached service, and there's always 5 of us that stayed together. So we went up to George Field, and that's when I took training on the twin engine airplanes.
I think you mentioned in our pre-interview that during that time there was a big flood on the Mississippi. And was it 43?
43, yeah, I was up there. Yeah, they asked for volunteers, and so I felt sorry for the people and showed pictures of them. Their homes flooded, so anyway, I volunteered and went out there, and we were out there a week. And in some places that Mississippi was over 2 miles wide. They didn't have the dikes built back in the 40s like they do now, and water was everywhere.
But you saw a lot of suffering there. Now, you eventually made it I guess, to Washington State.
Well, it came back to Craig Field again, and then from Craig Field we're there about 2 months, and then they issued us winter clothes, and I said, "Holy cow, are we going to go to Alaska?" That was in my mind, you know. So anyway, went to Washington, got on a boat.
How many people were on that boat?
3,000.
Soldiers?
3,000 soldiers was on the boat, yeah. And
Did you know where you were headed?
no, I had no idea. No, and so anyway, I got on the boat that took our clothes away, and then we zigzagged for 7 days. They said you zigzagging to keep. They thought there was a couple hundred Jap subs in the area, and they didn't, they didn't want the Japs to pick us up, and so we zigzagged. They said for 7 days, and I guess about 2 miles before we got to land, I looked out one morning and I could see some dark things sticking up in the horizon. I said, "Well, that must be land." So about 30 minutes later, I heard an airplane. I looked up, and the airplane was pulling a target behind it. And I said, "What in the world are they going to do here?" And all of a sudden, that big gun on the boat went off. Loudest noise I ever heard. And that was repeated 2 more times.
So you were headed into Honolulu, I guess.
That's right. The next morning, we pulled into Honolulu Harbor.
And you learned where Pearl Harbor was, I guess, at that point.
Well, yeah, it was pretty close to Pearl there. But anyway, they announced over the speaker that they blow that whistle, that little.
Yes.
That little, what they blow, that means attention. And so they said, "Well, the following people come on to a certain place." I've forgotten where it was, near the gangplank, and my name was one of the 5. And so
of the 3,000, they called 5 names, and you were one of them.
And I was one of them, and I was glad to walk down that gangplank. I said, "Holy cow, I'm sure glad I didn't join the Navy. I don't like that water." So anyway, then from there went to Hickam
Field,
and I was there I think I was there about 4 or 5 days, and then they sent us up to the 13th replacement depot at Wheeler Field. Go past Pearl Harbor on up about 35 miles up it's on a plateau, like high elevation. So that's where Wheeler Field, Schofield Barracks, and the 13th replacement depot was. And so that's where we.
So as I understand it, then you were in a unit that was going to replace soldiers who had been lost in action.
Right.
Now, were you ever deployed in that service?
No, I never was. In order to mark time, they send in several B-24s that had been shot up and no longer flyable, but they gave me the job of taking the instruments out. So I took instruments out, and when I was doing that, there were about it was about 20 of us that worked on these planes. If finally they wound up having 18 B-24s down in that kind of a gulge like, and so I noticed that every morning we go down there, just seemed like it'd be 3 or 4 missing, and it wasn't long until I think it's probably, I know us 5 was still there, and there's just only a couple more that already called others in,
Mm-hmm.
But
well, what kept you from serving further in combat?
the war ended.
Okay, so the atomic bombs were dropped.
Yeah, that. We knew that the word got out there they were going to have a big bomb, And so we just thought it was an extremely big bomb, maybe with some fluids in it for fires. But we had no idea it was atomic. And then,
How did y'all feel about that?
oh, mercy. Yes, 100%. Drop it. So anyway, I was in the bed at night when they announced that they dropped it, and I said, Harry, please drop another one. So three days later, he dropped another one. Well, at that time, I didn't know what the bomb had done. I didn't know 170,000 had been killed, and next on Hiroshima, and I think about 70,000 on Nagasaki. But
It kept you from...
back in better them than me. Said I had been taught to kill all these months, so let's get the thing over with.
Did you were you glad to come home?
Oh mercy, yeah. When I was coming home, I was delayed. Just when I was supposed to come home, I wrote my mother and I told her I'll be home for Christmas, and she said, well, naturally that was a good news for her. But right when they got ready to call me, they changed the method of releasing, going home. They had length of service, time overseas, combat missions flown, and all those were added in. And I hadn't been overseas as long as some of them, and they went ahead of me, and so it was in the February before I got home, and so
But you made it.
But I made it, and I tell you, when you're 12,000 miles away from home and Christmas time, and you hear Ben Crosby singing,
White Christmas.
I'll be home for Christmas. You can count on that. Man, that's the loneliest feeling you've ever had in your life.
I bet it was. I bet your family was glad to see you walk through the door.
Oh man, yeah.
Happy day. Now you came back to Gastonia. If we can kind of move forward, and you continue to work at BowNet, I guess.
Yes. Well, let's see. No, I didn't go to work at BowNet when I first came back out. We got a couple of lathes, and we started in the machine shop business. A guy, John Gibson, and then we was only in that business 2 months, and I got hepatitis. And they thought I had appendicitis. I told them I had a tremendous pain in my right side. So they rushed me to the hospital that night and took my appendix out. It wasn't my appendix. And so I had a fever, 105, and sometimes a little higher, and it wouldn't go down. So they sent me to Charlotte, and they started giving me penicillin. And every 4 hours, I got shot of penicillin, and I wound up taking 109 shots of penicillin. I was over 27 days. When I had my operation, I weighed 162 pounds, and when I was over there, I weighed 119 pounds.
Wow.
And
You were a sick man.
they told my daddy, no chance.
Uh-huh.
Said
No chance.
his liver's gone.
Oh, really? Well, obviously, somebody was wrong. You still have your liver, I take it.
Yeah, so said no man can live. His liver's gone. Said his kidneys are going to be closing down.
What'd you do? Got better?
Yeah.
And they released you?
Yeah, well, I can't. They released me. I think I weighed about 125 or 30 pounds, and I came home and stayed home, and my mom took care of me and my dad, and so.
And you got back on your feet.
Got back on my feet, yeah.
Now, tell me a little bit about how you met your wife, and then we're going to kind of move from there to maybe have you pick up your fiddle and play a little bit for us. But tell me how that happened.
Well, I had a friend, and and he was always going to square dances, and I wasn't attending any square dances. And he said, "Well," he said, "I'd like for you." He said, "I got a girl. I'd like for you to meet at a square dance." And so,
And where were these dances?
they were on Airline in Gastonia.
All right.
And so we anyway went up there one time, and then I didn't particularly like it. Then the next Saturday night he called me. I said, "Okay," just to get out. So I went up there, and this particular time my wife was there. The wife to be was there. So anyway, he knew her, and so that's how I met my wife. And so at the square dance, and so 18 months later we were married.
Oh, you are. Did she take a fancy to your fiddle?
Oh yes, she could sing real good. Oh yeah, yeah. I didn't play the fiddle too good back then,
You were still learning.
Yeah.
How did your family feel when you learned the fiddle? You learned it at home, I guess.
At home, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Was it because learning to play the violin can be difficult both for the person learning to play and the people having to listen to the person learning to play?
Yeah, I'll tell you, when I first got my fiddle, in fact, I was playing with a band, and it was two other guys. They were playing guitars, and they said, "We're going to have a lead instrument." And they pointed a finger at me, and I was stupid enough to say, "Okay." And I ordered a fiddle from Sears, which was in Greensboro, and it cost $27.45. It cost 49 cents postage to get it here. And I read the instructions, and it said E, A, D, G. And so I put the strings on it, rose them up the bow, took it to the piano, and I tuned it and started sawing on that thing. And I sawed on that thing for 2 weeks. And one day my sister heard me sawing on it, and she came in and says, "Al, please," said, "have you ever thought about blowing a horn?"
Well, you must have
I said no.
You must have had a quick learning curve because you did learn how to play it. And I'm going to ask you, do you have it with you today? I believe you do.
It's right over there.
All right, well, pick it up. Let's see if we can play a few tunes.